Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with Repertoire, the best versions of Sibelius's En Saga. Ooh, is this a cool tone poem? This is part of our ongoing series of covering shorter works, but En Saga is not really a shorter work. It's a major, major statement. It's anywhere from, 16 to 20 minutes long in most performances. And oh my goodness, is it special. It's the acme of Sibelius's early primitivist style, a piece of rawness and edge. It's almost minimalist in its thematic material. You've just got a couple tunes that get repeated over and over again in differing contexts at different speeds with fabulously evocative and atmospheric accompaniments. It gets into your being, and then it's raw and my goodness. And it has one of the greatest climaxes in all of music. It's in my video on 10 greatest orchestral climaxes where it's just roaring ahead and it smashes into a brick wall and just disintegrates. It's totally fabulous. And it's been recorded 1 billion times, and it's a very difficult work to record. Its scoring is absolutely unique, I think, in the sense that it's written for a large orchestra, but it uses no timpani at all. It uses a bass drum instead with soloistic virtuosity. Sibelius loved the bass drum because he liked pedal points. He liked to have long stretches of bottom on his orchestral textures, and whether he achieved it with double basses or with timpani sometimes or with bass drums or whatever. I mean, it was a feature of his style. And this is the bass drum concerto solo. I mean, it's an unbelievably exciting and fun piece to play if you happen to be the bass drummist. But it also does other interesting things. You've got those long, soft cymbal rolls that create this feeling of mist. It's like an orchestral fog over big stretches of the orchestra at the very beginning and at the very end. I can't even begin to describe just how many wonderful little details and things there are to listen for in these performances. And of course, does anybody get all of them right? Well, I don't know, probably not, but some performances do better than others. And so I have here 10 really good ones. I mean, there are lots of bad ones. I mean, we can talk about the bad ones, but I would much rather focus on the best ones, because you really need to hear them and compare them. There's a lot to compare, and it's fun to do because it's just one of those pieces that you hear it once, you'll have all the tunes in your brain to the point where they may drive you crazy. Da 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 da. Ba da 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 dum, ya da 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 dum, ba da 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 dum. Oh gosh, it's wonderful. Anyway, so let's see what we have here, and we'll go through them. They come in sort of two varieties: slower and slightly quicker. And slightly quicker, well, there are a lot of changes of tempo in the work, and the important thing is not to completely die when you get to the slow bits, especially the long, slow interlude before the big climax. Because Sibelius, part of the work's primitivism, if you want to call it that, is that Sibelius, when he repeats things, repeats them complete. He doesn't fragment the melodies particularly. So if you hear da, 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 in the slow tempo, he's going to do the whole tune. It's exactly as you think it's going to be. He's not like Haydn trying to make surprises and things like that. No, he wants to create this mood of what's the word? Sort of primal, mystical oppression and atmosphere by literal repetition. I mean, that's how it works, and it works fabulously. So, without further ado, let's start with this one. This is one of the longer ones, 19 minutes and 46 seconds. Mikko Franck. Now, Mikko Franck is a good conductor, a Finnish conductor. He plays everything slowly. He tends to be a slow guy, and there aren't that many of those out there. It's interesting, actually. This was his debut recording. on the Undine label, and he got the Swedish Radio Symphony Orchestra. It's coupled with the Lemminkainen Legends, also leisurely performances, but very well detailed and beautifully shaped and well paced. I mean, the proportions are all right. So there's nothing wrong with being a little slower in the quick and loud bits, because you get more quick and loud that way. And it lingers longer to carry you over the quieter bits, if that's the idea. Anyway, this is quite good. And so that's where we begin. Also quite good, and it never gets any attention because, true Sibelians have their true Sibelius things. One of the problems with Sibelius, and a lot of composers really, is that they have conductors who specialize in their work, which has amazingly, characterful and personal qualities. And so conductors who dabble don't get that much attention, because they're considered to be dabblers by the true believers, and everyone else just overlooks them. So here's one of those. Tone poems and incidental music with Yoel Levi and the Atlanta Symphony on Telarc. En Saga is 17 minutes and 47 seconds. It's a little couple minutes quicker than Mikko Franck. I mean, to good effect. I think here the point, of course, is that, you've got Telarc recordings, which is, bass drum city. Actually, this is well proportioned. It can go too far. It can. And sometimes it does, where you have just all bottom and it drowns out, the resonance just drowns out the rest of the orchestra. And that you don't want. Levi is really good at this kind of music because he's a precision guy. And he doesn't ignore the atmosphere, but he has a wonderful, incisive view of rhythm. And the Atlanta Symphony plays wonderfully. And you get, what else do you get on here? It's really good stuff. Karelia Suite, Pohjola's Daughter, The Swan of Twanella, pardon me, and Finlandia, of course. But it's a lovely disc, and we desperately need a Yoel Levi Telarc box. We need lots of boxes from Telarc, which Concord Music owns and will never, ever do anything with. We do, because Telarc recorded things in blocks with certain artists. And so, they had Lauren Mazel, they had Yoel Levi, they had, later in Atlanta, they had, before they had Robert Shaw, then Donald Runnicles, and, they had Dochnani in Cleveland, and they had their people. And they made wonderful batches of recordings. They had Paavo Järvi, who got a box because all this stuff was licensed. If they're not willing to do it themselves, somebody should license this stuff and just issue a big cheap box, throw it all in a box and just release it, because it's just wonderful stuff. Also interesting, very interesting performance live, Segerstam. Now, Segerstam did not remake En Saga with Undine when he did all the other stuff. You may remember the dim recesses of your memory, when there was so much crazy stuff going on in the record industry. Segerstam was in Denmark with the Danish National Radio Symphony Orchestra, and he did a Mahler cycle, and he did a Sibelius cycle, which was kind of soft-edged and blurry. This was part of that. And slow. When he went back to Helsinki, he perked up somewhat, and I think did better work. But there were some really interesting things in that initial Sibelius cycle. His Tapiola is 21 minutes long. I think it's probably the slowest ever. It's really, really brooding and atmospheric. And his En Saga is a little bit slower than Mikko Franck's. Yeah, it really is. But again, it has, I don't know, it's got the atmosphere. If you're one of the slower performances, you got to have the atmosphere, because that keeps you listening. But it's also very powerful. The climaxes, and it's well recorded, a little bit soft-edged, as all these recordings were from Denmark for some reason. But it's on Chandos, the Enchant series, probably disappeared forever. Chandos owes Segerstam a Segerstam box. Lots of luck with that. And then, of course, how could we talk about this without discussing Paavo Berglund? Berglund's En Saga, where is it here? It's been released a few times, is also pretty measured in tempo. Berglund was generally zippy. He got through Tapiola very, very quickly, actually, if I'm not mistaken. It's not on this one. No, it's not on this particular twofer. But these are his earlier Sibelius recordings with the Bournemouth Symphony. And these are all worth hearing because they have that primal edge. The Bournemouth was not the most polished ensemble. At the time. They were a provincial ensemble, but Berglund was a real orchestra trainer, and he had them playing very, very well in this music, and more than just, technical details. He had them making the right sounds, not just good sounds, and so these are fun performances. Yes, there could be more bass in this performance, and a bunch of these performances. It's always an issue how the bass drum relates to the rest of the piece, because it's the most important bottom sound in the work. And so, yeah, and actually, if you want to be technical about it, and why not? We're always technical. Sibelius asks that the bass drum be played with timpani sticks. So it's not like you're using those big bazunga mayosh. Actually, it's called the technically the bass drum mallet that has a French name. With the big fat thing, fuzzy head. And if you use timpani sticks on a bass drum, you're really not going to hear anything. It's not a very good choice, to be honest with you. And you don't get that low bass resonance. So you've got to use a medium-sized stick, one that will make the bass drum bassy, but also allows you to do quick rhythmic patterns. Because most of the time, I've played the part, so I can tell you, it's going bump, ba-dum, bump, bump, ba-dum, bump, bump, ba-dum, bump, bump, ba-dum, bump, bump, like this. And the ba-dum bumps aren't usually terribly distinct on a bass drum if you're using a big, fat, reverberant kind of mallet. So, but it's a very, very good performance, and the brass has that snarl that you want. You want them to go da-da-da-da-dum, ba-da, da-da-da-da-dum. Okay. Wonderful. This is a very, very fine recording that you may overlook. It's with Petri, Sakari, and the Iceland Symphony Orchestra. They did a very good Sibelius symphony cycle, with the possible exception of the early romantic ones, numbers 1 and 2, that just need more. Let me just say more. I mean, the Iceland Symphony, it has a small string section. It's not the biggest orchestra in the world, and Sakari really knows the music very well. He plays it very well. You could ask for more strings. If you like the performances with the huge orchestras, the major string sections, and they are wonderful in this music. I mean, we will be getting to some of those. This is leaner and meaner, but it's still very, very good. And you just put up with you turn it up, turn the volume up, and it sounds terrific. It really does. So that's on Naxos. And then we've got, of course. See, now we're coming to the 5 heavy hitters. Those are sort of the 5 up-and-comers, but there are 5 really serious heavy hitters, and one of them is Karajan with the Berlin Phil. It's what's this, 1824? Yeah, that's what, 18 minutes, 24 seconds. Karajan's En Saga on EMI, like his Finlandia, which he did not remake for Deutsche Grammophon, that is the En Saga, is wonderfully primal sounding. I mean, he really lets his brass go, which he very seldom did. The string playing is, of course, wow, baby. I mean, that climax business when they're going da 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 da. I mean, it's a wall of sound. But as is typically the case with Karajan, you don't get much bass. It's the one defect in the performance. You really need it in Finlandia, which only has a soft bass drum roll somewhere in the middle of it. You don't have to worry about that. It doesn't make any difference. But in En Saga, oh yes, you want to hear more bass. You just got to have, supporting that fabulous, rich, big, ballsy orchestra. And it's kind of a pity, but it's still a knockout of a performance. It really is. I mean, engineering issues aside, it's pretty stupendous. And just to hear the orchestra let go in this piece is pretty special. So that's on EMI. And some of you told me after we talked about Finlandia, the Karajan Finlandia, that you can't find these performances. They're not like on streaming services and all that, which is, it's outrageous. It's absolutely terrible. It's a crime. I mean, they've been released on CD many times. They were in that big EMI box, then the other big EMI box that had the separate boxes inside it for various repertoire specialties and things. But it's pity. It's a loss to the universe that these things are not readily available. God knows people would listen to them. I mean, it's Karajan, right? I mean, then Ormandy in Philly, of course. Now, Ormandy did this twice. He did one on Sony, an earlier one, and a later one on RCA. And this bucks the rule that Ormandy's later recordings are not as good as his earlier ones. This later one is better. It's from like 1974, I think, 75. That's when it is. It was coupled with the Fifth Symphony in Tapiola and some of his Sibelius remakes, which a lot of them were very, very fine. Really first class. And this En Saga has, again, it sonically, it's a little constricted. I would love to see this remastered when we have the next Ormandy box coming, but they should redo his RCA stuff too and remaster it and try and open out the sound and give it a little bit more amplitude, because some of these recordings were just terrible. Absolutely terrible. This is not terrible, but it's not great. It's a nice, shaggy, again, like Karajan, you know, great conductors have their sonic predilections, even the ones who were real chord guys and had a sonic, patina that they slathered everything with. You know, they understood that some pieces, it's just not so appropriate. Karajan got it, and Ormandy gets it. This is another one of those. It's a really primal sounding En Saga with amazingly edgy brass playing. It's really scarifying at the climax. It's wonderful. I wish the sonics were better, but the performance itself is absolutely terrific. And it's one of the quicker ones too. I think it's around 16 minutes or so in a bit. It's fabulous, just fabulous. Oodles of fun. And now we get to the three where you've got wonderful orchestral stuff, and the sonics are good. I mean, the bass is there. It's really there and really, really powerful and pregnant. You want pregnosity. Here we go. Colin Davis, Boston Symphony on Philips. Now, he remade this for RCA, and it sucked, like all of those RCA Sibelius. His second major Sibelius effort was a disaster. Then he redid them again, not En Saga, I don't think, but the symphonies with the LSO's own label, and that was a little bit better. But Colin Davis's best Sibelius is this one. It's on Decca now, but was Philips, where he did all the symphonies and a bunch of tone poems. And the tone poems are Finlandia, Paul Killer's daughter, which is amazing, Tapiola, which is wonderful, The Swan of Twanella, Valse Triste, En Saga, the Karelia Suite, and they also toss in the violin concerto with Salvatore Accardo, which is quite fine. But this En Saga is really, really good. Oh, it's warm, and it's big sounding, and the Boston brass are what's the word? Minatory. Is that the word? Where it says menacing quality, a grim, menacing quality. It's nice. You know, the trombones and the trumpets and the horns all have very different timbres, and so when they're echoing each other and answering each other with bits of the melody, you've got this wonderful color and impact to the sound. So yeah, this is wonderful, absolutely wonderful. One of the great ones. Davis in Boston. Also quite fascinating and a very different interpretation is this one, Esa-Pekka Salonen with the L.A. Phil. Now, Salonen has not always been the best Sibelius conductor. You know, his approach is kind of Boulesian. You know, he's one of those clear-eyed composer types, and he's very, very rhythmic and not terribly emotional in his interpretations, and just clear and you know, straight ahead kind of guy for the most part. And this En Saga has the bass drum from hell, one of them. I mean, it's really, really prominent, and you need a fabulous sound system to pull this off, because at the climax of the whole thing, it may blow up your system. It's really something else. But the performance itself too is razor sharp. It's not one of those moody, slushy ones. It's a cold evil. I don't know how else to describe it. You know, very, very clear, very, very transparent, really sharp and spiky version. And it's perfectly legitimate and quite unusual as an interpretation. It works really, really well because those climaxes just have pulverizing power. It's exciting as hell to listen to. That's on Sony. And then, last but not least, however, If you want the En Saga to end all En Sagas, well, it doesn't, but oh my gosh, it's just got everything. You got to have this one. On BIS with the original Dynamics recording. It doesn't have the warning, this may destroy your system thing anymore by the time BIS got around that, but it should, because this is thrilling. This is Neeme Järvi with the Gothenburg Symphony Orchestra. 18 minutes, almost exactly, well, 18 minutes and 35 seconds, with a bass drum to absolutely knock your socks off, brass playing that's just totally uninhibited, and Järvi, who is the guy if you want to let the orchestra loose and let it do its thing. It has all of the impact in the bass of Salonen, but better balance with the rest of the orchestra. So you get that the full power of the thing really comes at you. And if you and this is readily available, it's easy to get, thank God. It's not like all these other things that are coming and going, especially on major labels. They're deleted, they're re-released, they're such a pain in the ass to try and source some of this stuff. And I'm sorry for that. I mean, there's nothing I can do about it, unfortunately. But boy, baby, you want to have a good time? Try this. And you also get the 2 suites of Scènes Historiques, which are not well known and which are wonderful. Absolutely beautiful music, especially the first suite, which is gorgeous. It's unusual Sibelius. So just get this if you haven't heard it and play that En Saga. And feel free to report back to me, because I think you're going to be just blown away, especially if you know some of these other versions. Now, as I said, there are many other performances of En Saga, many other very good Sibelians, and you may have your choices. But I think these really capture the work and offer the best combination of atmosphere and sonic splendor, which you really got to have in this tone poem. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Oh, wait. I want to make one other point at the end. Sibelius revised this piece tremendously in 1902. It was originally written around 1895, somewhere in there, 94. And the original version has been recorded by Osmo Venska, coupled with the original version of the Fifth Symphony. And it's in every way inferior. I'm just telling you right now. You may want to get it. It may be interesting. It's in the BIS Complete Sibelius edition, or you can get it separately. It's about 3 or 4 minutes longer, and the extra length doesn't help. There are episodes that Sibelius cut. There's a big episode that he cut in the middle that has a sort of exotic, vaguely, Orientalist digression, if you want to call it that. It actually sounds like it came out of The Wood Nymph, which is the symphonic poem. He wrote it about the same time, and where it belongs much better. In his revision, he focused on the basic thematic material and on that primal feeling of repetition and inexorability that makes it a much more exciting experience. So I'm just telling you right now, do not worry about that earlier version. It's nice to have if you're a Sibelius completist, but it does not compete with the revised version, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. So this is the one. Again, Neeme Järvi, and there are other BIS recordings of En Saga in the revised version. Venska did another one with Lotti. This is the one. Trust me. Järvi, Gothenburg, BIS. Now we can say, keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.